Picky eating is something we are in the throes with right now with all of our friends. I have a 5-year-old. I was so excited. We did all of the, baby-led weaning approach and who's
Mm-hmm.
this great little toddler eater. And then while I was pregnant, we got very tired and he got to eat a lot of chicken nuggets and corn dogs. And we were having a hard time getting back to enjoying real foods. So I'm Kelsey Baas, founder of Compleo, and this is Kay, our amazing dietitian, one of our dietitians on staff. So she is going to help us talk through today a little bit about picky eating. Everything's a spectrum, so I don't like saying what's
Mm-hmm.
normal or not normal,
Right.
but maybe strategies for home
Mm-hmm.
and when you might need to look at additional support.
Okay.
Because I think probably every kid goes through a little bit of
Yes.
this, right? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know
And how the parent responds can determine how long that lasts.
how long that lasts. So when you say that, so in the home, if he's saying, I don't want to eat this, will you make me chicken nuggets? How should we respond to
Okay.
that?
I think, as you know, and as I've said before, words are powerful. So how you say these things really makes a difference. But I think, first of all, it's very important to understand what I call the division of responsibility with eating. Okay. So what is the parent's job in this process and what is the child's job in this process? So the parent's responsibility is to determine what the child is going to eat. That's not their job. They're the child. That's the parent's job.
Right.
What, when, so the parent determines the schedule, and where. Is it going to be out on picnic table or is it going to be in the kitchen? That's the parent's job. Okay. The child's job is to decide if they're going to eat or not.
And how much of it.
And how much of it they're going to eat. So to me, if a parent can really adopt that principle, it is freeing. Because that way, if the child says, I don't want that, then the parent says, oh, well, we'll have another, we can try again at lunch and maybe you'll enjoy your lunch more. So, but the way we say those things matters. Instead of saying things like, you don't need that, or you shouldn't eat that, or, that's not good for you. Things like that. We want to avoid that negative type talk and keep things positive. I had a parent the other day ask me about snacks, and I said, you determine what those are. And yes, you want to have what I would call fun foods, all the, now and then. But if fruit is the snack that day, or fruit and a cheese stick, for example, that's a snack. And if the child says, I'd rather have a brownie, you say, well, we may have brownies tomorrow or the next day, but today the snack is fruit and a cheese stick. So the way you say it really makes a difference.
How do you feel about, we've tried to adopt that policy.
It's hard.
It's hard. So in terms of making sure, I really want him to get good sleep. That's really important.
Right.
And so he usually likes his breakfast and lunch. They're usually more safe foods, a little more predictable. And then dinner, we cook different things based on what we meal planned that week. And so we've adopted that principle and he respects it. He'll say, oh, I don't really like that. And we're like, okay, well, this is what we have. But then he'll wake up hungry.
Okay.
Because we're not getting enough calories in, and I feel like it interrupts sleep a little bit. So is it damaging to say when he wakes up hungry, okay, well, your option is an apple and peanut butter, or just have an option from the kitchen so that he's not going to bed hungry if he didn't like dinner? How do you approach that?
Okay, so there's a couple of things that might help. One is when you have a picky eater, it's kind of helpful, even though you determine what, to have something on that plate that they'll eat. So they may not eat the green beans, they may not eat the potatoes, but hopefully they'll eat the meat, whatever it is, that type of thing. So trying to have something that they will eat is very helpful. And then if you have a scheduled snack at night, which is totally appropriate for children, then they'll have something before they go to bed. And then it doesn't become a situation of a battle where they didn't eat their dinner so they don't get a snack, or they know they're going to get that special snack so they don't eat their dinner. If it's predictable, like you said, that's a good word, then they know they've got their dinner, they know they've got their snack, If they eat it, fine. And if they don't, fine. And I think, it's really hard to know as a parent, when is this a problem? When.
That's my next question is,
Yeah.
when is this just a phase, and when is it we benefit from support from a dietitian or a feeding therapist?
Yeah. So I would say the first thing that you look for is, are they falling off of the growth chart? So when they go for their regular checkups, the doctor plots them on the growth chart. And if they're going off of it, if they're going down, then that could be nutrition related, and that's when it's really a concern. If you have a child that's eating maybe 10 to 15 foods, but their growth chart looks great and they're gaining, then it's probably more of a phase. And they may continue to be picky for years. They may.
Or as an adult,
Yes.
We've had lots of conversations about how I don't want my child to be as picky as me and how they introduce foods. So.
Yeah. And so introducing foods is a whole nother discussion, right? So children are afraid of anything new. They are. Yeah. So if they've never seen Brussels sprouts and you give them Brussels sprouts, they're going to ew. They're not going to probably eat that. But if you continue to exposure, it takes, research says, 15 to 20 times of exposure to a new food for a child to even halfway look at it and accept it.
We've given up by 15 to 20 times. That's really interesting. I think we're giving up too early then.
You just continue. You serve those things. If they're things that you eat and your husband eats, serve them. Hopefully someday they will pick them up. They may or may not. But I think it's very encouraging when you think about, a middle-class child, we're going to say, socioeconomically middle-class child. Have you seen one starve? No, me either. So I think, sometimes we get too concerned about the nutrition. Yes, we want them to have their calcium. We want them to have their vitamin C. We want them to have their protein. But really, they're probably going to survive. It's probably going to be okay. And if, as a parent, you tend to be a nagger or you tend to, coax and encourage, they pick up on it. They're going to think to themselves, I can push her buttons if I'd say no to that. But if you have a poker face, which is what I call it, which no response to what they eat or don't eat, then it doesn't give them any ammunition, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Those are all very, very helpful things.
But very difficult. I get that. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, after a long day at work, it's sometimes easier just to say, oh, you want that?
Absolutely.
We'll zap that while we're eating our meal. So when you kind of say like the nutrition piece and no middle-class child has ever starved, how there's, lots of people on Instagram who will make you feel like what we're feeding our child may or may not be contributing to behaviors. So when it comes to quality of foods and nutrition, how much does processed food and the nutrition that they're getting affect brain growth and development and behaviors? Like, does it really affect those things?
Okay. So a lot of what's on social media about this subject is kind of what I would call testimonials. Like somebody says, I cut out dyes and my child totally changed their behavior, that type of thing. We really don't have great research that shows all these things. Now, do children need all these dyes? No. And I'm fine with them not getting them. In fact, I think we could use a lot less of a lot of the additives, and I have no problem with that. But to say they cause various problems, we really don't have great research on that. In fact, people talk about carbs making a child really hyper. Well, yeah, the blood sugar may go up a little bit after they eat a carb, but it actually then may drop and they may actually be more tired, if they eat a large amount of carbohydrates and no protein, something like that. But for overall health, brain growth, concentration, we know that a healthy diet will help a child with that. It helps them stay full. It helps them be satisfied. It gives them all the nutrients they need for growth. So as a general rule, yes, a good diet's going to help all of those things. But cutting out or adding a specific thing, is it really going to help? We don't have a lot of good research for that.
And I think a lot of times when I see these testimonials, I see they made a whole host of lifestyle changes. And so
exactly.
any one of those things, or if you're willing to cut those, are you more likely to be strict with bedtime, have a well-rounded diet, doing all these other things that in combination they're doing it together, I think is probably usually the case.
In fact, there was some research several years ago where they looked at changing a child's diet, like taking out all the additives, things like that. So the parent was preparing all of this wonderful food, no longer using any processed food. The child was getting a lot more attention from this, cooking just for this reason. And so the questions came up in that research study. Is this because this child is just getting a lot more attention from her parents or his parents? So yeah. Or is it really that they made their bread at home? I mean, we don't really know, right? So are those fine things to do? Yes. Are they going to necessarily help behaviors? We don't have, we really don't.
Yeah, and the staying full piece. So when we talk about kind of the gentle parenting and making sure kids' needs are met, if they're hungry or their basic needs aren't met, a lot of times we have behaviors.
Yes.
If they are eating foods that don't keep them full, it could just be that they're hungry, not that there was or wasn't a certain amount of sugar in it.
Right. So. Right. And, hydration is important for children. I think sometimes we forget. I mean, they need water too, and so keeping them well hydrated helps.
How much water does a kid need?
Okay. So, most kids can regulate that pretty well. But what I tell my parents is a good 8 to 12 ounces with each meal so that they have that. If they want it, it's there. And then another 8 to 12 in between. With their snacks, and they'll get what they need. We have some specific calculations, but we don't really need that in this case.
Well, thanks. Hopefully that helps y'all with a few basic tips to get started. Like I say all the time, it depends is our favorite answer because individualized plans really are the most helpful. So if you're problem solving specific challenges in your household around food or body image, we highly recommend working with the experts. Really look for that registered dietitian. There's a lot of different certifications out there now, but if you have a registered dietitian, they've been through the full coursework and internship work to be a reliable and educated source. So we hope y'all have a great day, and thanks for tuning in.